Hare Krishna. Let's continue our discussion on Madhya Lila chapter 6, the liberation of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. Yesterday we were discussing about the conversation between Gopinath Acharya and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. Gopinath Acharya is a devotee of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and he is brother-in-law of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, and we saw how Gopinath Acharya in so many ways he was trying to convince Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya how Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Swayam Bhagavan, Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. He was quoting different scriptural references as well. And we saw how in Kali Yuga there is no specific Leela avatar, but there is Yuga avatar. So we were discussing how in the Shuklo Rakta Tata Pita Idanim Krishna Tam Gataha, quoting Asan Varna Trayohi Esya Grinato Aniyugam Tanuhu Shuklo Raktas Tata Pita Idanim Krishna Tam Gataha. How Gargamuni he actually tells to Nanda Baba, this same baby, he had appeared in different yugas as Shukla, which is in white, Rakta, red, Tata, Pita, in yellow also. Idanim Krishna Tam Gataha. Now he is in darkish complexion. So, citing that, Gopinath Acharya says that yellow refers to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, like that. And then the concluding words at the time, he actually, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he tells Gopinath Acharya to go and request Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that he wants to meet him because he wanted to teach Vedanta Sutra to him. And he was saying, I'm like his fatherly figure, so I want to naturally teach him so he can relish reading Vedanta Sutra as a sannyasi. So this was his good intention. So this is Madhya Lila chapter 6, text 114. According to the instructions of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, Gopinath Acharya went to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and invited him on the Bhattacharya's behalf. The Bhattacharya statements were discussed before Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Gopinath Acharya and Mukunda Datta disapproved of the Bhattacharya statements because they caused mental pain. We discussed this yesterday. Hearing this, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, "Do not speak like that. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya has shown great affection and mercy toward me. Out of paternal affection for me, he wants to protect me and see that I follow the regulative principles of a sannyasi. What fault is there in this?" The next morning, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya together visited the temple of Lord Jagannatha. Both of them were in very pleasant mood. When they entered the temple, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya offered Chaitanya Mahaprabhu a seat while he himself sat down on the floor out of due respect for a sannyasi. So he's following the etiquette. Even though he is now taking the role of a teacher, nevertheless he is giving an asana for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Now where is the setting? This is in Jagannath temple. So this whole conversation is happening in Jagannath temple, or the conversation that's about to happen. He then began to instruct Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu on Vedanta philosophy, and out of affection and devotion, he spoke to the Lord as follows. So this famous conversation between Samvada between Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, it takes place in Jagannath Puri temple. Now, what we are about to read today, and maybe in next class also, is one of the most technical sections of Chaitanya Charitamrita. So we'll read it slow. Prabhupada gives detailed purports for each one of these verses. We will try to touch as much as possible to get some proper understanding, or as much proper understanding as we can possibly get based on our own little intelligence. He then began to instruct Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu on Vedanta philosophy, and out of affection and devotion, he spoke to the Lord as follows. Prabhupada explains in the purport that Vedas, they are the repository of knowledge. Now, after writing the Vedas, Srila Vyasadeva, who is the compiler of the different Vedas, or rather after compiling the Vedas, dividing the Vedas, Vyasadeva, he foresaw about lack of intelligence of people in future, especially in Kali Yuga. So in order to favor all Kali Yuga Vasis, including us, he then wrote the conclusion of the Vedas called Vedanta or Vedanta Sutra, it's called. The entire body of knowledge of the Vedas, they are written in sutra or very short format, Tattvamasi, Anandamayo Vyasat, Raso Vaisa. So each one of those little statements which are called sutras, they can then be dissected and they can then be elaborated to cover a bigger portion of the Vedic scriptures. So this way Vyasadeva made such a huge, vast body of knowledge into something which is more understandable, fathomable by people in this world. So this was his intention. So Prabhupada says that vast body of knowledge is called Vedas. The conclusion of the Vedas, the Anta. Anta means conclusion of the Vedas. That's called as Veda Anta, or the conclusion of the Vedas. And that Vedanta is written as sutras. So Prabhupada says some places it's called as Brahma Sutras, and in other places they are called Vedanta Sutras. They both are the same. Now, Vedanta Sutras as such, the meaning is very, very clear. So what Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya is about to teach, quote unquote, to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is not the Vedanta Sutras in its direct repetition. Instead, the Mayavadi interpretation of the Vedanta Sutra to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And that Mayavad interpretation or the commentary of Vedanta Sutra is Sariraka Bhashya. And Prabhupada says, for Vaishnavas, the natural commentary of the same Vedanta Sutras is Srimad Bhagavatam. But for Mayavadis, the interpretation of that Vedanta Sutra is Sariraka Bhashya. So that Sariraka Bhashya is what he is trying to teach to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So I'll read the purport. Prabhupada says the Vedanta or Brahma Sutra written by Srila Vyasadeva is a book studied by all advanced spiritual students, especially by the sannyasis of all religious communities, sampradayas. The sannyasis must read the Vedanta Sutra to establish their final conclusions concerning Vedic knowledge. Here, of course, the Vedanta mentioned is the commentary of Sankaracharya, known as Sariraka Bhashya. Here means what he is proposing to teach Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya intended to convert Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who was a Vaishnava sannyasi, into a Mayavad sannyasi. He therefore made this arrangement to instruct him in the Vedanta Sutra according to the Shariraka commentary of Sankaracharya. All the sannyasis of the Shankara Sampradaya enjoy seriously studying the Vedanta Sutra with the Sariraka Bhashya commentary. It is said, Vedanta Vakeshu Sada Ramantaha. One should always enjoy studying Vedanta Sutra. And we also enjoy studying Srimad Bhagavatam. So, Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, so it's there. Madhya Lila chapter 6, text 121. The Bhattacharya said, hearing Vedanta philosophy is a sannyasi's main business. Therefore, without hesitation, you should study Vedanta philosophy. I'm reading the translation, it's mentioned, therefore, without hesitation, capital Y-O-U, you know. So, without hesitation, he is telling God, without hesitation, you with the capital Y should study Vedanta philosophy, hearing it without cessation from a superior person. Text 122, Lord Chaitanya replied, you are very merciful to me, and therefore, I think it is my duty, again, my with the capital M, me with the capital M. So Supreme Lord is speaking, exhibiting his humility. Lord Chaitanya replied, you are very merciful to me, and therefore I think it is my duty to obey your order. 123, thus for 7 days continuously, for 7 days continually, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu listened to the Vedanta philosophy expounded by Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. However, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did not say anything and did not indicate whether it was right or wrong. He simply sat there and listened to the Bhattacharya. On the 8th day, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya said to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, "You have been listening to Vedanta philosophy from me continually for 7 days. You have simply been listening fixed in your silence. Since you do not say whether you think it is right or wrong, I cannot know whether you are actually understanding Vedanta philosophy or not." Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied, "I am a fool and consequently I do not study the Vedanta Sutra. I am just trying to hear it from you because you have ordered me. Only for the sake of executing the duties of the renounced order of sannyasa do I listen. Unfortunately, I cannot in the least understand the meaning you are presenting." And Prabhupada is mentioning in the purport, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu presented himself as if he were a sannyasi in name only, or in other words, a number one fool. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, you will see, he exhibits the same mood in front of Ishwarapuri also, when he goes in front of his spiritual master, Ishwarapuri. And then later on, when he goes and meets Prakashananda Saraswati, at that time also he would tell, "My spiritual master considered me as number one fool. So he told me simply to chant this Hare Krishna Mahamantra." And Prabhupada, he writes in the commentary that actually Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Supreme Lord. He is telling we are all fools in material world. And we have to understand that if we simply take the instruction of the spiritual master and follow, that is the only thing we can do in our foolish mentality. So here also Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is saying, unfortunately I cannot in the least understand the meaning you are presenting. So here Prabhupada, continuing here, Mayavadi sannyasis in India are very much accustomed to declaring themselves Jagat Gurus, teachers of the world, although they have no information of the outside world and are limited in their experience to a small town or village. Prabhupada says if you go to India, you will find, Prabhupada says even in Mayapur, people haven't left their village and they'll call themselves Jagat Guru. Prabhupada says like that. So, although they have no information of the outside world and are limited in their experience to a small town or village or perhaps to the country of India, nor do such sannyasis have sufficient education. Unfortunately, at the present moment, there are many foolish sannyasis, both in India and elsewhere, who simply read and study Vedic literature without understanding the purports. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was having his discussion with the Chandkasi, the Muslim magistrate of Navadvipa, he recited a verse from the Vedic literature to the effect that the order of sannyasa is prohibited in this age of Kali. Ashwamedam Gavalambam, sannyasam Phalapaitrikam, Devarena Sutotpatim, Kalau Pancha Vivarjayet. Ashwamedam, which is horse sacrifice, Gavalambam, cow sacrifice. Ashwamedam Gavalambam, sannyasam, one should not take sannyas. Sannyasam Phalapaitrikam, one should not offer oblations of flesh to forefathers. Sannyasam Phalapaitrikam, Devarena, one should never beget children through his brother's wife. These 5 acts are Kalau Pancha Vivarjayet, are prohibited in Kali Yuga. Only those who are very serious and who follows the regulative principles and study Vedic literature should accept sannyasa. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu approved of a sannyasi's reading the Vedanta Sutra or Brahma Sutra, but he did not approve the Shariraka commentary of Sankaracharya. Indeed, he said elsewhere, Mayavadi Bhashya Shunle Haya Sarvanash. He actually says this to Sarvabhauma only later. If one hears the Shariraka Bhashya of Shankaracharya, he is doomed. Thus, a sannyasi, a transcendentalist, must read the Vedanta Sutra regularly, but he should not read the Shariraka Bhashya. So the distinction Prabhupada is making. Here Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya is he is telling to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, I will teach you Vedanta Sutra, but he is not teaching him Vedanta Sutra. He is actually trying to teach him Shariraka Bhashya only. Whereas Prabhupada is saying, Prabhupada is clearly making distinction. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu on the other hand says, one should read Vedanta Sutra, but one should not read Shariraka Bhashya. Vedanta Sutra is written as the conclusion of the Vedas by the same author. And to make even Vedanta Sutras, after writing Vedanta Sutras also, Vyasadeva feels on the instruction of his spiritual master, Narada Muni, that people in Kali Yuga are still hopeless. So then he writes Srimad Bhagavatam as the natural commentary. Idam Bhagavatam nama Puranam Brahma Samitam Uttama Shloka Charitam Chakara Bhagavan Rishihi Nishreyasaya Lokasya Dhanyam Swastena Mahat. It's there in Bhagavatam. Okay, so he kept all this in order to make people peaceful from all the pangs of material miseries. He wrote the Amala Purana or Srimad Bhagavatam as the natural commentary of Vedanta Sutra. So here Prabhupada says the real commentary on the Vedanta Sutra is Srimad Bhagavatam. So Vedas is there, conclusion of the Vedas is Vedanta Sutra. One can directly read the Vedas or one can directly read Vedanta Sutra. One should not read Shariraka Bhashya. If one wants to read something even more simple than Vedanta Sutra, then to have a proper understanding of Vedanta Sutra, then again read Srimad Bhagavatam. All written by the same author. The real commentary on the Vedanta Sutra is Srimad Bhagavatam. Arthoyam Brahma Sutranam. Srimad Bhagavatam is the original commentary on the Vedanta Sutra written by the author himself, Srila Vyasadeva. Madhya Lila chapter 6 text 128. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya replied, I accept that you do not understand, yet even one who does not understand inquires about the subject matter. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya is saying, I understand that you don't understand, however, why are you not asking any questions? Text 129. You are hearing again and again, yet you keep silent. I cannot understand what is actually within your mind. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then revealed his mind, saying, I can understand the meaning of each sutra very clearly, but your explanations have simply agitated my mind. Sometimes you come across that, right? There is some answer one devotee would try to tell you. Some other devotee may actually come in between and he say, no Prabhu, let me explain. And then you would think actually the first devotee was much more clear. It's very common. Same thing here. The direct meaning of Vedanta Sutra is very, very clear. Anyone who actually reads that, they can understand. That's why we should never doubt about book distribution, whether this is understandable for people coming from, non-Indian background. Anyone can understand. Because Krishna is directly dictating, Prabhupada is writing for each and every soul forever in this world. So we should not think that, if I distribute this book, can people understand? Who is giving this knowledge? Krishna. Do we think Krishna doesn't know how much devotees can understand or how much his fallen conditioned souls can understand? He knows it. So Prabhupada is representing Krishna through the parampara. Prabhupada has written, we should not doubt when we actually distribute the books, we have to be very, very clear, 100%. Sometimes the argument comes, we have distributed so many books, where are so many devotees? Once that point was actually put forth to Devamrita Maharaj, and he said, you do your job, Krishna will do his job. Your job is distributing books. If you can, try to teach them. But don't worry about it, because it's a multiple lifetime exercise. You have to keep on doing it. Yes, over a period of time, you will see the change. Change is there, may not be that much visible. That doesn't mean we don't, after distributing books, you just sit there and relax. No, we run classes, we follow up, we cultivate whoever who has actually taken the books as much as possible. But still, we should never doubt the potency of these words. Just like how Vedanta Sutras are directly understandable, same way, simply if we take the books and we present it, Prabhupada says there is enough credit in these books, simply you present these books as they are, people will understand. And we have got so many experience also of instances when we think, this is complicated, but people, so many of them, they have even taken Bhagavatam 1.1, they finish reading and they have come back and taken the whole set. Some people take Bhagavad Gita, come back and collect more books of Srila Prabhupada. So you will come across that. If we don't have conviction, it doesn't matter. Vaidhi Bhakti means, Prabhupada said, Vaidhi Bhakti means you do because I ask you to do. Here I refers to Srila Prabhupada. So we simply do it, and Krishna and Srila Prabhupada will bless them, will give them Shukruti to understand, and they will do, we can do our bit. But we have to understand, this is also one excuse which our mind gives, not to distribute books, because it's difficult. But book distribution is not difficult. Book distribution, actually, I take it back, book distribution is always difficult. Book distribution is never easy. That's why the credit is maximum. So you try. What's the big deal? What's there to lose? So you distribute books this way and that way, people will take it, they will understand it. Just like how here Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is saying, the meaning of Vedanta Sutras are very, very clear. Likewise, these scriptures that are written by Krishna, translated, commented by Srila Prabhupada, they are also very, very clear. The souls can understand, Jivatma can understand. We don't need to bother. We are not Krishna, but let us simply follow the instruction of the spiritual master without interpreting it. Srimad Bhagavatam is the original commentary on the Vedanta Sutra written by the author himself, Srila Vyasadeva. Text 129. You are hearing again and again, yet you keep silent. I cannot understand what is actually within your mind. And then we saw 130. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then revealed his mind saying, I can understand the meaning of each sutra very clearly, but your explanations have simply agitated my mind. 131. The meaning of the aphorisms in Vedanta Sutra contain clear purports in themselves, but other purports you presented simply covered the meaning of the sutras like a cloud. 132. You do not explain the direct meaning of the Brahma Sutras. Indeed, it appears that your business is to cover their real meaning. Now Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is shooting him in point blank range directly, that you are covering it. And Prabhupada here in the purport says, giving example of Bhagavad Gita, in every verse of Srimad Bhagavad Gita, it is clearly stated that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha. In every verse, Vyasadeva says, Sri Bhagavan Uvacha, the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, or the Blessed Lord said. It is clearly stated that the Blessed Lord is the Supreme Person, but Mayavadi atheists still try to prove that the absolute truth is impersonal. So you can understand the impudence of Mayavada interpretation here. Here Krishna himself is saying, author is writing, Vyasadeva is writing Sri Bhagavan Uvacha, still they are saying, actually Lord has got no form. Bhagavan, Van means it's only used for a person. Van suffix. Dhanavan, Vidyavan, Bhagyavan. Likewise Bhagavan, it's a person. Van is used only for a person, Prabhupada says. So the meaning of Bhagavad Gita is very, very clear. 133. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu continued, the Vedanta Sutra is the summary of all Upanishads. Therefore, whatever direct meaning is there in the Upanishads is also recorded in Vedanta Sutra or Vyasa Sutra. 134. For each sutra, the direct meaning must be accepted without interpretation. However, you simply abandon the direct meaning and proceed with your imaginative interpretation. 135. Although there is evidence, other evidence, the evidence given in Vedic version must be taken as foremost. Vedic versions understood directly or first class evidence. Prabhupada actually explains in the purport, there are 10 different types of evidences one can actually take. One of them is direct evidence. So I'll read that. In his book, this is Srila Jiva Goswami writing, in his book Sarva Samvadini, Srila Jiva Goswami has noted that although there are 10 kinds of evidences, direct perception, Vedic version, historical reference, hypothesis, so on, and although they are all generally accepted as evidence, the person presenting a hypothesis, reading the Vedic version, perceiving or interpreting by his experience is certain to be imperfect in 4 ways. So if you take so many different types of evidences, Prabhupada is saying the person presenting hypothesis or reading the Vedic version, perceiving or interpreting by experience, they all are imperfect. Even if you take, let's say there is some incident that happens. So the incidents, who's the direct witness, their words will be taken with more weightage than somebody who heard something or some footage in, let's say, some CCTV camera or something, which is like little blurry. Or somebody who perceived it from a very, very long shot, for example. All of them, they do provide them some supporting evidence, but nobody can come to a proper conclusion. There are many cases that went or that get closed, that get dismissed because the evidences are all very blurry. But when there is a direct evidence, somebody who was there right in ground zero, who has observed it, and who then come and bearing witness for what he or she saw, that takes the maximum priority. So same way, In terms of understanding philosophical truth also, there are different ways how one can come to a conclusion. One can accept something as evident. But among all of that, he says, Vedic versions understood directly or first class evidence. So if you see a statement, if the meaning of that is very clear, straightforward, that takes a priority over whatever supporting statements that may actually say in any other place in the Vedic scriptures. Because why others are not given as much priority as this one, context may change. Okay, in some context, something else may be, for a doubting soul, there is no peace either here or there. You can interpret it wrongly. Correct? That means if Arjuna actually raised this concern or question to Krishna, my Lord, the sun god Vivaswan is senior to you by birth. How am I to understand? When he asked that, you can misinterpret this particular line saying he is a doubting soul, he is not going to be peaceful. You can stretch it out of context. However, if there is a direct meaning to support that, you can actually take evidences from other places. So that's what he is saying. Now what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is saying here is, Vedanta Sutra is very, very clear on areas or on portions where if it is not clear, to get a bit more understanding, you can then go for commentary. But when the meaning itself is very, very clear, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is saying, I can understand the meaning directly, but in the name of explaining this, you are giving commentary that's misconstruing the direct meaning of the Vedanta Sutras. So he is rejecting it. So that's what Prabhupada is quoting here from Jiva Goswami. So even if somebody says a hypothesis or a direct perception and everything, they are still certain to be imperfect in 4 ways. We know the 4 defects basically. Tendency to make mistakes, illusion, cheating propensity, imperfect senses. That is, he is subjected to committing mistakes, to become illusioned, to cheating and to have imperfect senses. Although the evidence may be correct, the person himself is in danger of being misled due to his material defects. Apart from the direct presentation, there is a chance that an interpretation may not be perfect. Therefore, the conclusion is that only a direct presentation can be considered evidence. An interpretation cannot be accepted as evidence, but may be considered proof of evidence. Okay, I'll read this very important line. The conclusion is that only direct presentation may be considered evidence. An interpretation can be accepted as an evidence, but may be considered only proof. 136. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu continued, conch shells and cow dung are nothing but bones and stool of animals, yet they are taken as pure. Why? Because Vedic scriptures say so. But generally, other than this, the conch and cow dung, any other stool and bone of any other animal, if you touch, you are considered contaminated. You have to take bath immediately. But these two, they are considered pure according to Vedic scriptures. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is quoting that here. The Vedic statements are self-evident. Whatever is stated there must be accepted. If we interpret according to our own imagination, the authority of the Vedas is immediately lost. Prabhupada gives this example, right? If the guru tells to the disciple, I am feeling thirsty, please bring me water. If the disciple interprets it, that guru wants the best, between water and milk, milk is superior, so he brings milk. Prabhupada says, but that's not what the guru wants. Same way here, interpretation. Okay, so that's the pitfall of interpretation. So here, Vedic statements are self-evident. Whatever is stated there must be accepted. If we interpret according to our own imagination, the authority of the Vedas is immediately lost. And in the purport Prabhupada gives, usually we come across Vedic literature. What are the Vedic literature? Prabhupada is providing a list here. Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Samaveda, Atharva Veda, Mahabharata, Pancharatra, and original Ramayana. There is so many different versions of Ramayana. Prabhupada is specifically saying, and original Ramayana are all considered Vedic literature. The Puranas such as Brahma Vaivarta Purana, Naradiya Purana, Vishnu Purana and Bhagavata Purana are especially meant for Vaishnavas and are also Vedic literature. Okay, so the 4 Vedas, Pancharatra, original Ramayana, original Mahabharata, and then Prabhupada is mentioning 4 Puranas here. Brahma Vaivarta Purana, Naradiya Purana, Vishnu Purana, Bhagavata Purana. They are all meant for Vaishnavas and are also Vedic literature. And Prabhupada is saying Bhagavad Gita is already part of Mahabharata. There is no need for interpretation, and if we do interpret, the entire authority of the Vedic literature is lost. It's a very simple point, anyone can understand. There is a direct evidence that is there, you take it and you use it. But if you take it and start to twist the meaning, then who takes the priority? If we start to twist the meaning, it will come across that we are overriding the instruction of the Vedic scriptures, so then their authority is lost, then speculation starts again. In which case, why do you go to Vedic scripture in the first place? Then there will be chaos everywhere. Text 138, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu continued, the Brahma Sutra compiled by Srila Vyasadeva is as radiant as the sun. One who tries to interpret its meaning simply covers that sunshine with a cloud. All the Vedas and literature that strictly follows the Vedic principles explain that the Supreme Brahman is the absolute truth, the greatest of all, and a feature of the Supreme Lord. Actually, text 140, actually the Supreme Absolute Truth is a person, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, full with all opulences. You are trying to explain him as impersonal and formless. 141, wherever there is an impersonal description, now this is very important, because some places, especially even Ishopanishad, you will come across some verses will sound as if the Supreme Lord is impersonal. Some descriptions are there, and they are there. Now Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is giving the principle, whenever you come across any impersonal description in any of the Vedic literature, how are we supposed to understand? Okay, so this is Madhya Leela chapter 6, text 141. Listen carefully, this word, this verse. Wherever there is an impersonal description in the Vedas mean to establish that everything belonging to the Supreme Personality of Godhead is transcendental and free of mundane characteristics. Which means, in some places the word he is using, Nirvisheshattan rakha hai, shruti gana, prakrita nishedi kare, aprakritastapana. Sometimes you will come across the Supreme Absolute Truth is without qualities. That means he is saying without material qualities. Saguna and Nirguna. Whenever the Supreme Brahman is considered, or like, sometimes it's mentioned the Supreme Absolute Truth is Nirguna. Nirguna means no qualities, no material qualities. That's what it means. Nirguna means. But Saguna means he is with all transcendental qualities. Okay, so both of these words you will see them being used in context of the Supreme Absolute Truth. Saguna means he is with full spiritual qualities. Sa means usually with. So Saguna is with full spiritual qualities. Nirguna means no material qualities. So here, wherever there is an impersonal description in the Vedas, or if you come across Nirvishesha in this context, the Vedas mean to establish that everything belonging to the Supreme Personality of Godhead is transcendental. In other words, this Nirvishesha or Nirguna, they are used in context of saying there is no material characteristics, there is no material qualities. In that context, impersonal description is used. That's the only context in which impersonal description is used. And free of mundane characteristics. 142. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu continued, whatever Vedic mantras describe the absolute truth impersonally only prove in the end that the absolute truth is a person. Like we'll come across, Brahmano hi pratistaham, amritasya avyayasya cha, shashvatasya cha, dharmasya shukrasya aikantikasya cha. And I am the basis of impersonal Brahman. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is saying, there are very few instances where impersonal description is given, and that is also simply to establish the fact that the Supreme Absolute Truth is without any material or mundane characteristics or qualities, mundane qualities. Also, one may say, why should, this impersonal description also should be given? Would have been nice if Krishna didn't give up, didn't rather touch on that at all. He could have easily given up. But then this point comes, when you talk about absolute truth, means he has to be complete. There has to be form, there has to be formless aspect also. Prabhupada would give the example. Let us say you call somebody as the most powerful man in the world. There has to be some evidence for that. There has to be some way how you prove that such a person is the most powerful person. Jai Shri Krishna. there has to be some means how you can prove that such a person is the most powerful person. How can we understand such a person is more powerful? If somebody says, whoever goes to him for a boxing bout, he will smash them, he'll knock them out, fine. But still that's not good enough to actually say he is the most powerful person, because there may be millions of contenders, let's say at least, maybe billion of contenders. It's not practically possible for him to go and fight with each one of them. However, let us say there is one person, I'll tell you of a powerful person means, Priyavrata Maharaj, it's given during his reign of 11 Arbuda, which is 1.1 billion years. That's how long he ruled, more than that. And as he was ruling, he was in his place, he is doing his bhajan, but whenever he sees any problem happening in any corner of Bhumandala, he'll simply take his bow and he'll do a twang. Tang. And when the thieves, robbers, all these perpetrators, when they hear it, they immediately get very scared and they behave very nicely. Now that is being powerful. You sit in one place, you simply twang the bow, he is also human only. But with that control, even without him having to go there, he is exercising his power sitting in one place. You understand? In contrast to that, let us say there is another king, wherever there is problem, he has to send his commander-in-chief. He has to go there, fight with them. Okay, this is also power, but nothing in comparison to what Priyavrata Maharaj is exhibiting here. You understand? Now let's take a bit more further. You talk about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is sitting in one place. He maintains this planetary system. He maintains all material and spiritual creation. How effortlessly? So effortlessly, he didn't even have to care about it. Just playing games with his mates. Things just happen automatically. How is that possible? Well, his energy is everywhere. Prabhupada gives this example, beautiful example. Just like in this body, soul is sitting where? Hridesha Arjuna Tishtati. He is sitting in one place, in the heart, and from there, Prabhupada says, whichever part of the body, if somebody beats, pinches, immediately because the soul's energy is pervading throughout this body, immediately we can actually understand through consciousness. Consciousness is the energy of the soul, Prabhupada says. Same way, Prabhupada says, now similarly, Supreme Lord, just like how the soul is sitting in the heart, Supreme Lord is also sitting in the spiritual world, happily dancing, playing, everything, all play, no work. But just like how our consciousness, the energy of the soul is pervading throughout this body, similarly, Supreme Lord, who is the super soul, who is the supreme soul, his energy is also pervading in this entire creation. Anything happens in any corner, he will immediately sense it. That's how powerful he is. That's how pervasive he is. Okay, Vishnu, Vasudeva. Prabhupada gives one meaning for Vasudeva. Vasa means to reside, like Srinivas means the abode of Sridevi or Lakshmi ji. So Lord Balaji we call Srinivas. Krishna is also called Srinivas. Likewise, Prabhupada says Vasudev means, Vasa means to reside, one who is residing everywhere. That's Vasudev. Vishnu also means one who is pervading everywhere. So this impersonal description that you will come across, even in Upanishads you will come across, Ishopanishad also, or you will come across in some other places. Why is this description given? Is ultimately to glorify about the energy of the Supreme Lord, about the power of the Supreme Lord, about the potency of the Supreme Lord. That is the only need why the impersonal description is given there. You understand? That's the reason. Without it, how can you actually explain? Krishna is sitting in one place, okay. But how will you explain about consciousness now? That consciousness is pervading everywhere as Brahman, basically. So just like how we have the soul, soul's energy is consciousness pervading throughout the body. Consciousness is an impersonal term. Now just because I have consciousness doesn't mean I don't have any personality. Consciousness is just the energy of my personality, which is the soul that I am. Same way, in order for me to understand my area of, in order for me to clearly define, or in order for others also to understand my area of jurisdiction, There is a need for me to use an impersonal term, which is consciousness. If somebody comes and beats me, beats my leg, and if I tell them like, hey, why are you beating? If they say, I'm not beating you, I'm just beating your leg, they'll say, no, but this belongs to me. Then they say, it may belong to you, but what's your problem? You are just sitting here. But my response to them will be, no, but it's paining to me. Correct? So there is a need for using an impersonal aspect of my existence as consciousness to clearly define my area of control, my potency, my power, which is in this simple micro world. Now for Supreme Lord sitting in one place, in order for us to fully understand about his potency, ultimately this impersonal description is given to glorify about the potency of the Supreme Person, which is Krishna. So he is sitting there in Goloka Vrindavan. He is here as Sri Sri Radha Gopinath. Now in order to understand about his potency, this impersonal description that is actually given is simply to extol the glories of how powerful he is, extol the glories of how potent he is, extol the glories of how rich he is, how opulent he is. Without that, how will you actually explain? So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is saying that is the reason why impersonal description is given in the Shastras. Just like if somebody says, who are you? I'm not this body, I'm the soul. So there is any consciousness for you? No, it's just my soul is just sitting here. Then if somebody says, well, if your soul is sitting there, there's no consciousness, why do you need such a big body? You just reside in the heart. Like Prabhupada says, Hiranyakashipu, he was in such deep tapasya, whole body, everything got eaten, and Prabhupada says, he was maintaining his life only with his bones. It's there in Bhagavatam. That's how much he was emaciated completely. So, but I said like, no, this is my body, I need this body. So same way, this entire creation is Krishna's. His potency is pervading everywhere. And in order to explain about that potency, that energy that is spreading everywhere, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is saying, the Vedic mantras are using impersonal description. But if we conclude, going to one extreme thinking, just like how I said, only your heart is yours, because that's where you are living, be peaceful. Rest of your body, I can beat anytime, anywhere with the stick. We won't agree to that proposal. Or conversely also, if somebody actually says, yes, you are very true, there is consciousness everywhere, what it means is there is no personality for you. That is also wrong. Because if somebody says there is only consciousness negating soul, then they are negating my personality, which is not fully true. Or if somebody says, no, you are only a personality, I will confine you only to your heart, rest of your body is not useful for you, that is also not true, because that's also for me. So when will my existence be completely recognized, completely accepted? What will be the complete description of my existence? When somebody says, you as soul sitting here, this body is the covering, and your soul is actually pervading through this entire body, not directly, but through its energy called consciousness. That is the complete description. Wherein the personal aspect is taken, impersonal aspect is also taken. Exactly same way Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is explaining. Supreme Lord is Bhagavan, he is sitting there, impersonal description is only for his consciousness being pervading everywhere. In order to explain that, Vedic scriptures use impersonal description. So if you take it completely, then everything makes sense. But if you just pick and choose only certain areas just to suit your own interpretation, obviously anything will be confusing. With that, there will be confusion even to recognize another person. Correct? So that's what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is saying. I'll read this here carefully. This is text 142. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu continued, whatever Vedic mantras describe the absolute truth impersonally only prove in the end that the absolute truth is a person. So through all this, naturally it comes, hey, don't do this. Why? The boss will come and, if somebody joins a factory, Prabhupada gives a very beautiful, simple example. Somebody may own a factory. So he is there, but he is still pervading everywhere impersonally. If something happens to somewhere, immediately they say, hey, why are you doing this? Boss will get upset, but boss is not there. Energy is still there. Okay, so wherever there is exhibition of power, there will be impersonal description. And that's the only reason Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says Vedic scriptures use impersonal description. Whatever Vedic mantras describe the absolute whatever Vedic mantras describe the absolute truth impersonally only prove in the end that the absolute truth is a person. So in the factory example, somebody would actually hear saying, boss will come, till that point he is just hearing. Finally when the boss comes, we will understand, okay, so this is the person. I am working under him or I am working under her. And this is how powerful they are. I better act properly, behave properly even in their absence. So this is, even impersonal description is simply to extol the glories of the powerful person. So same way, whatever Vedic mantras describe the absolute truth impersonally only prove in the end until the arrival of the boss. Only prove in the end that the absolute truth is a person. The Supreme Lord is understood in two features, impersonal and personal. If one considers the Supreme Personality of Godhead in both features, he can actually understand the absolute truth. So if somebody wants to completely understand about Krishna, they have to understand both. Vadanti tat tattvavidas tattvamegnanam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti shabdyate. All, there are three aspects. Tattvamegnanam advayam. Even though they are three, in many ways they are non-different. Dvayam means there is duality. Advayam means they are non-different. Why? It's still the same personality. It's coming from him only. Bhagavan, Paramatma and Brahman. So they are all coming, even though it's one single personality in different aspects, nevertheless, Tattvam Jnanam Advayam, they are still non-different from each other. Why? Even if somebody goes and touches anything anywhere, still Supreme Lord will get the message through his energy, Brahman. Or inside the heart, if somebody thinks of something, still Paramatma will send SMS to Krishna. So then that will also be immediately be understandable. So Supreme Lord is one, but he is pervading, expanding his potency differently this way. The Supreme Lord is understood in two features, the impersonal and personal. If one considers the Supreme Personality of Godhead in both features, he can actually understand the absolute truth. He knows that the personal understanding is he knows that the personal understanding is stronger because we see that everything is full of variety. No one can see anything that is not full of variety. Imagine if this whole room gets flooded with light, blinding light, what can you see? Okay, you may say, Prabhuji, it's too bright, that's why we can't see. Fair enough. What about if it's entirely dark? No. Then also we can't see. In Vrajalila, some places, in some kunjas where Radha and Krishna are actually seated, if somebody from Radharani's village come, they will see only Radharani there. Krishna's whole dressing, whole kunja will actually adjust the pattern so that Krishna will be there, but his whole body and everything will merge with the blue color flowers there. Nobody can see anything. When there is no variety, nobody can see anything. If everything is in the same color, if everything looks exactly the same, if there is no variety at all, what can you see? You cannot see anything. Zebras have the lines. When the beasts actually look at the zebras, they will get confused. This is Mother Nature's arrangement for their protection basically. So zebras usually don't get that easily attacked. If they are together, it will confuse, it will bewilder the animals. When they actually look at it, they don't know where the zebra is starting and where is it ending. They just see the same pattern everywhere. Whenever there is no variety, nobody can see anything. No one can see anything that is not full of variety. Some places you would see, it snows. Snow covers everything. Nobody can see anything. 143. Everything in the cosmic manifestation emanates from the absolute truth, remains in the absolute truth, and after annihilation again enters to the absolute truth. 144. The personal features of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are categorized in three cases, namely ablative, instrumental and locative. Now this is slightly technical. Even in English term, ablative, it's just one case of a noun. If you call a word as ablative it means it's, okay, I'll give you an example. Prabhupada says, when they asked this question to Prabhupada, Ayurveda. When should we take Ayurveda medicine and when should we take allopathy? So one devotee, he was having symptoms of yellow fever. And Prabhupada, when he looks at him, he says like, hey, looks like you are having yellow fever. You should go and take medicine. And then that devotee says, no Prabhupada, I'm in Ayurvedic treatment. And Prabhupada says, Ayurvedic treatment is preventive, it's not a curative. Which means, preventive means if you follow Ayurveda, then you can avoid getting any disease. But Prabhupada says, but once you have gotten something, Ayurveda cannot treat it, you better go to English medicine. You go to allopathy. So Prabhupada uses this term. Ayurveda medicine is a preventive medicine. Allopathy is curative medicine. Okay, you can use it as an adjective, but it's the same medicine, but you are using the two words to actually say in what context it is actually acting. Curative is one case, one state, one case you can say. And preventive is another. So same way here, supreme absolute truth also, he is saying, if you take in this example I am giving, there is medicine, it is taking two cases. Preventive case or preventive state, curative state. It's not really state. State has a slightly different context. State means it's the same thing. It is in a certain state of being, and then it moves to the other one. Solid state, liquid state, gaseous state. We talk about matter. It's the technical term that's used here is case, CASE. Okay, so there's a curative case, like a business case, use case. Okay, there is a curative case and there is a preventive case. As long as medicine is concerned. Okay. Same way, if you take supreme absolute truth, it can also take three cases, which is creation, maintenance and destruction only. But Prabhupada uses technical terms here as apadana, karana and adhikarana, which means creation, maintenance and destruction only. Prabhupada is explaining here in English ablative. Ablative means it's like originative. Janmadi yasya yataha. He from whom everything, emanates. So that's the supreme absolute truth in terms of creation. In that case, it is called ablative. That's one case of the supreme absolute truth. Okay, in terms of creation, for example. Likewise, there is maintenance. That's what Prabhupada here is explaining as instrumental. Instrumental means the means by which the whole creation is maintained. So that is instrumental. So Supreme Lord is ablative, which means he is the origin of everything. He is instrumental, which means he is maintaining everything, and locative. Locative means after annihilation, everything goes into him. So in that sense, it is given as locative. Okay, so ablative, instrumental and locative. Ablative means he is the origin of everything. Instrumental means he is the means that is maintaining everything. And locative means he is the one into whom everything goes in also. So in that sense, it's given as cosmic destruction is given as locative. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is saying, this is in text 144. 145 to 146, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu continued, when the Supreme Personality of Godhead wished to become many, he glanced over the material energy. Before the creation, there were no mundane eyes or mind. Therefore, the transcendental nature of the absolute truth, mind and eyes is confirmed. I'll read this again. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu continued, when the Supreme Personality of Godhead wished to become many, he glanced over the material energy. Before the creation, there were no mundane eyes or mind. Therefore, the transcendental nature of the absolute truth's mind and eyes is confirmed. The word Brahman indicates the complete Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is Sri Krishna. That is the verdict of all Vedic literature. So whenever he wanted to enjoy, he becomes many. That's how Krishna expands as Balaram, Krishna expands as Radharani, then everyone in turn also expand. So Brahman here refers to Purna Purushottam Bhagavan Krishna. Text 148, the confidential meaning of the Vedas is not easily understood by common men. Therefore, that meaning is supplemented by the words of the Puranas. How greatly fortunate, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is giving a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam. How greatly fortunate are Nanda Maharaj, the cowherd men and all the inhabitants of Rajabhumi. There is no limit to their fortune because the absolute truth, the source of the transcendental bliss, the eternal supreme Brahman has become their friend. Okay, so the Vedic Apanipada mantra rejects material hands and legs, yet it states that the Lord goes very fast and accepts everything offered to him. All these mantras, so Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gives these two examples and says, all these mantras confirm that the absolute truth is personal. Okay, if you read this verse, how greatly fortunate are Nanda Baba, Nanda Maharaj, cowherdmen and all the inhabitants of Rajabhumi. There is no limit to their fortune because the absolute truth, the source of transcendental bliss, the eternal supreme Brahman has become their friend. Okay, so all the description it gives as if it's impersonal, and finally it's saying he has become its friend. Yan mitram paramanandam purnam brahma sanatanam. But yan mitram is given. Mitra means a friend. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is saying, even though these descriptions, impersonal descriptions are given, they are simply used to add to the glory of the personality. Text 152. Are you describing as formless that supreme personality of Godhead whose transcendental form is complete with 6 transcendental opulences? He is asking. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya here. The supreme personality of Godhead has 3 primary potencies. Are you trying to prove that he has no potencies? The internal potency of the Supreme Lord Vishnu is spiritual as verified by the Shastras. There is another spiritual potency known as Kshetrajna or the living entity. The third potency, which is known as nescience, makes the living entity godless and fills him with fruitive activity. So he's talking about Ishvara, then he's talking about marginal potency and external potency, all 3. 155. O king, the Kshetrajnana Shakti is the living entity. Although he has the facility to live in either the material or the spiritual world, he suffers the threefold miseries of material existence because he is influenced by the avidya, nescience, potency, which covers his constitutional position. 156. This living entity covered by the influence of nescience exists in different forms in the material condition. O king, he is thus proportionately freed from the influence of material energy to a greater or a lesser degree. Prabhupada would often say, Karanam Guna Sangosya. Whenever this question comes, I was listening to a lecture this evening, and one person in the audience is asking, why did the living entity come down? How can he actually stay here? We see that in Bhagavatam class also. This question keeps on coming. Even Vidura asked the same question. Prabhupada is saying, you want to know why living entity is in material world? And the person is saying, yes, Swamiji. Karanam Guna Sangosya. Prabhupada is saying, because Karanam means, you want the reason, here is the reason, Karanam. Guna Sangosya. When the living entity comes in contact with the material nature, then Prabhupada says, then he takes a material body. Then Krishna gives a field of forgetfulness. In order to enjoy in that field of forgetfulness, the living entity has to come in contact with material modes of nature. So Prabhupada says, living entity desired. So Supreme Lord fulfills everyone's desires. Man proposes, God disposes. So Prabhupada is saying, living entity desired to enjoy in a area of forgetfulness, in the field of forgetfulness. So Krishna said, all right, Karanam Guna Sangosya. He gave opportunity for living entities to interact with material modes. And that's how he come. He come to get embodied in one of these 8.4 million species. Text 157. I'll finish with a couple more verses. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is Satchidananda Vigraha. This means that he originally had 3 potencies. The pleasure potency, the potency of eternality, and the potency of knowledge. Sat, Chit and Ananda. Together, these are called the Chit potency, and they are present in full in the Supreme Lord. For the living entities who are part and parcel of the Lord, the pleasure potency in the material world is sometimes displeasing and sometimes mixed. It's never pleasing fully. I'll read this line carefully. For the living entities who are part and parcel of the Lord, the pleasure potency in material world is sometimes displeasing and sometimes mixed. Prabhupada is not saying sometimes pleasing. Well, the verse doesn't say sometimes pleasing. It says sometimes displeasing, which means either you are in total sadness or some mixed sadness. That's all. That's the constitutional position in material world. This is not the case with the Supreme Personality of Godhead because he is not under the influence of material energy or its modes. 158. The Supreme Personality of Godhead in His original form is full of eternity, knowledge and bliss. The spiritual potency in these three portions, Satchidananda assumes three different forms. The three portions of the spiritual potency are called Hladini, the bliss portion, Sandhini, the eternal portion, and Samvit, the knowledge portion. We accept knowledge of these as full knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Prabhupada writes in the purport, to acquire knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one must take shelter of the Samvit potency of the Supreme Lord. 160. The spiritual potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead also appears in three phases: internal, marginal, and external. These are all engaged in His devotional service in love. All three. Maya also. External is Maya here. Internal is Antaranga Shakti, Bahiranga Shakti, and Tatastha Shakti. All three are engaging in His devotional service in love. In His spiritual potency, the Supreme Lord enjoys 6 kinds of opulences. You do not accept the spiritual potency, and this is due to your great impudence. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is now chastising. 162. The Lord is the master of the potencies, and the living entity is the servant of them. That is the difference between the Lord and the living entity. However, you declare that the Lord and the living entities are one and same. 163. In the Bhagavad Gita, the living entity is established as the marginal potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, yet you say that the living entity is completely different from Lord. And then he quotes Bhumirapo Nalavayu, and then Aparaya Mitastunyam, both the verses. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego are my eightfold separated energies. Besides these inferior energies, which are material, there is another energy, a spiritual energy, and this is the living being, O mighty armed one. The entire material world is sustained by the living entities. So here he is saying, in the Bhagavad Gita, the living entity is established as marginal potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yet you say that the living entity is completely different from the Lord. Prabhupada is giving purport. The Brahma Sutra states that according to the principle of Shakti Shakti Maktor Abeda, the living entity is simultaneously one with and different from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Qualitatively, the living entity and the Supreme Lord are one, but in quantity, they are different. According to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's philosophy, Achintya Beda Abeda Tattva, the living entity and Supreme Lord are accepted as one and different at the same time. So you can't clearly demarcate and say they are completely different or they are completely one. Qualitatively they are one and quantitatively they are different. Prabhupada would say Anu and Vibhu. Text 166. The transcendental form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is complete in eternity, cognizance and bliss. However, you describe this transcendental form as a product of material goodness. Prabhupada says there is Sattva and there is Vishuddha Sattva. Shuddha Sattva. Supreme Personality of Godhead's body is in Shuddha Sattva. It's not in Sattva Guna. Prabhupada says Mayavadi's understanding is the Supreme Personality's body is in Sattva Guna. So Prabhupada says in material world, Sattva Guna cannot exist on its own because there's always clash between the other two modes. So it will always be in Mishra state only, in mixed state only. Whereas the Supreme Lord, he is always Apapa Viddham, Prabhupada would say. He who is not Shuddham Apapa Viddham, it's given. Apapa Viddham means one who is free, one who is uncontaminated or untinged by any modes of material nature. That's what it means. We'll stop there and we'll continue. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Gopinath Bhagwan ki jai. Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Maharani ki jai. Shri Shri Gaur Nitai ki jai. Samaveda Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita ki jai. ISKCON Sydney Yatra devotees ki jai. Devotees in Mayapur TV, YouTube and Facebook ki jai. Jai Nitai Gaur Premanande. Hari Hari Bo. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare